Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Drew Collin here, bringing you our cold and dark tutorial in the Carenado Twin Commander 690B. And Carenado just released the Twin Commander 690B not too long ago, a couple of days for the X-Plane. Just to start off, this is version 1.0. This version is for X-Plane 11 only, and it is a state-of-the-art configurable FPS-friendly logic system. It's fully VR compatible. It's got full PBR, has an X-Plane GNS 530 that is actually very FPS friendly. The good thing is it does support Reality XP's GTN 750, and it's something I would highly recommend upgrading to if you do purchase this aircraft. I'll probably go into a little bit more detail as to why. And it also is Goodway compatible. For those of you that don't know anything about Goodway, they are an X-Plane flight planner. For more information, I'll go ahead and leave a link below in the video notes, as well as a link to the Carenado Twin Commander 690B. It does include 5 HD liveries, as well as 1 blank HD livery as well. So there's different ones for you to choose from. I like this one the best. I'm a big fan of blue myself, and so I did go along with this one. The red one's really nice too, and the other ones are not bad at all, really. But this one seems to pop best for me. Going into the inside of the aircraft, Carenado did a really good job with the gauge placement. Everything is really smooth. I love the way everything looks. We have the overhead, throttle quadrant, and then of course the back, which actually has fold-out tables, which is nice if you're carrying passengers. All around, this has been a really fun aircraft to fly. I definitely recommend flying it, purchasing it, checking it out. You can also get their Twin Commander 690B version in Flight Simulator 10 as well. And moving on, I did want to go through the cold and dark startup for the 690B. Carenado does provide quite a bit of documentation for the aircraft, one going over the systems. I've already done a tutorial on that. It was for the systems reference tutorial, so if you want to check back on some of my earlier videos, I did go into a full detail covering everything that's done in the systems reference tutorial for the aircraft. That kind of explains a little bit how everything works. And I wanted to delve more into the cold and dark because unfortunately the checklist that Carenado provides for you is actually quite confusing for anybody that may be new to this aircraft or maybe new to aviation. If you're used to flying the big boys, you know, the 747s, the 757s, the 737s, and it can actually be kind of challenging going from a big jet aircraft to even a small GA aircraft. There's a little bit more you have to do, a little bit more you have to watch out for. You have more of your engines and your instruments and more procedures that you do have to stay on top of when you're flying GA, as well as, you know, aviating, navigating, investigating, communicating, being so low to the ground as well. So what I did, I wanted to go ahead and take that normal checklist and revise it in a fashion that is more suited to Carenado's version. So I am going to leave a link below in the video notes if you want to go ahead and download that 690B checklist and follow along as I do the tutorial. That will more or less mirror what is actually going on with the version that we have here. So you're not going to have a lot of the jargon in that you can't quite understand. So it is simplified. Moving back to the outside, for 1 through 7, if you for 1 through 6 on the normal checklist, it basically just covers doing the walk around, checking the cabin door, doing the safety, the seat and safety belts, internal locks, flight control locks, there's speed static selector, which isn't modeled in this. So all we really need to do, we have 3 wonderful menus here. One for the autopilot, which is a very basic autopilot. It's actually really easy to use, not something that's going to leave you scratching your head trying to figure out, you know, what's going on, what am I doing here. It's actually very simple, and I'll have another video where we delve more into that as we do more flights. As far as the cameras and volume, you can change your cameras and you can change the volumes as well. Just a note, if you like to do your own presets via the numlock keys, it will reset all of these default views for you. So if you do like these and you want to keep these, don't touch them. If there's any of the ones that you want to use out of these, pull from them, that's fine. But once you do set your own presets, these, unfortunately, pilot view won't be pilot view anymore, throttle and so on. It will override those defaults. So in order to go 1 through 6, it's just basically going to cover the static elements. And all you have to do to remove those is right here. So we check those off. We can close the pilot door and the baggage door as well. Hopping back inside real quick, I do want to go over the pilot door. If the door lock button is selected on the overhead, that will prevent you from opening the pilot door. Now I did watch a few videos on the 690B, and during the startup they do like to keep the door unlocked in case there's an emergency egress that needs to take place. So until we're about ready to taxi, or we get close to the taxi phase, they do like to keep the door unlock button in the unlock position. That way you do have access to open the pilot door and close it as well. Moving down to the environmental system controls, those are going to be located just below the flight instruments on the co-pilot, or correction, on the pilot side. And here you see we have environmental controls, and following along we have bleed select switch, the depressurization switch, the override temp switch, max flow, all need to be in the normal position. Mode selector switch stays in off ram air. Auto temperature is basically as required or pilot's discretion depending on where you are. If it's really hot where you are today, you'll want to keep it on cool, and vice versa. Moving down to pressurization controls, our cabin rate of climb goes to 0, and the cabin altitude will check and set field pressure altitude. There's a pretty easy formula in order to figure out field pressure altitude. It's standard pressure minus current pressure multiplied by 1,000 plus field elevation. So in this case I'm at San Diego and it's 17 feet. So my field elevation for me for pressure altitude is going to be minus 13. So I have gone ahead and set that in here. Moving along, we're going to make sure that the gear lever is in the down and locked position. Horsepower indicators are reading 700. Engine control switches on the left and the right engine are in engine off. And we want to make sure all of our overhead panels are either in the off and normal positions, in which they are. So that's good. We're going to do an external power start today. There's two positions for the external power. One is parallel and one is series. Your normal start is going to be in parallel anytime the temperature is pretty much between 0 degrees Celsius and 32 degrees Celsius. If the temperature is below 0 degrees Celsius or at above 32 degrees Celsius, then you'll use the series mode. Otherwise, parallel is going to be your normal position of operation for the external power button. And if we open up our options menu on the bottom right, you'll see you have external power on. As soon as you select that, the external power button will automatically go to parallel for you. You can hear it winding up. Moving on, if you do want to note, minimize electrical load prior to starting engines. This is typical on any GA aircraft, something that's always done, but it's just a reminder there that all non-essential electric equipment should be off prior to starting the engines. Battery switch comes on. We're going to extinguish our annunciators, control, distribution, position light, anti-collision light comes on, and the anti-collision light is basically your beacon light. And that is all we have to do on the overhead now. So continuing down, we'll check generator switches are off. So generator switches for the left and right, and we want to make sure those are on. until we start the engine. So generator switches are off while starting engines. Gen off annunciators should be illuminated, in which they are. Moving along, we'll go ahead and test the annunciator, making sure all of our annunciator lights are powering on the overhead, center, and panel. We're good, so we can let go. Hydraulic pressure should be 470 to 605. My hydraulic pressure gauge is always at 1,000. I don't know if that's something that Carenado hasn't modeled. Not sure if it's just a problem I'm having, but unfortunately my gauge is always stuck at 1,000 before, during, and after engine start, during flight, the whole time. Fuel quantity as required. I want to actually put a little bit more fuel in here. Actually, no, I'm just going to leave it where it's at. That's fine. And our fuel counter. Fuel counter is located right here in the center, just above our navigation instruments. And in order to reset it, we can just toggle the little handle here. That'll reset it for you, and you're good to go. Moving on, we'll make sure our parking brake is set. Prop sync switch is off. Flap control lever is neutral or up. Mine is in the neutral position. I know it's supposed to be in the up position, but for me it is stuck in the neutral. So that's why in the POH here I just went ahead and put neutral or up. So whatever is working for you, that's fine. And then the circuit breaker panel is not simulated, so you don't have to worry about that. I also do want to make sure that our power levers here are in flight idle, and our condition levers are set to low ground. Bring them up just a little bit. Taxi lights are off, so that's good. That is the before start engines checklist. Once you get through it a couple times, it'll be really quick. All you're doing is basically checking environmental, checking your instruments, fuel quantity, fuel counter, making sure your overhead switches are in the normal or off position, adding external power or battery, canceling the annunciators, getting your position and anti-collision lights on. And that's it. Moving forward, we'll go to starting engines for the 690B. It is a little tricky, but once you do it a few times, it'll actually become like second nature. It won't be such a chore for you. But there is an NTS test that we do before engine start. So that's kind of where it gets a little bit tricky, but I'll go over that with you. So moving on, starting engines, we're just going to make sure that the battery switch is on. Anti-collision and position switch are on. Our condition levers are low RPM. Power levers are flight idle. And fuel and hydraulic shutoff switches, I haven't seen those. That's why I put not simulated. I did look all over and tried to find them. So if you do, please let me know. But I've done quite a few thorough sweeps for this thing, and I haven't found anything as far as the fuel and hydraulic shutoff switches. Moving to the overhead, we'll make sure that the engine override and motor switch is in the normal position. This is extremely important. The only time you want to do a motor start is typically they say within 10 to 45 minutes after landing. If your inlet turbine temperature is reading over 300 and you want to try to cool down the engines, what the motor position does for the ignition override and motor position switches is it will allow you to turn the engine over without activating the igniters and without adding fuel. So you can run it through its cycle several times in order to cool the engine down, and once you have the inlet turbine temperature down below 300, you can go ahead and proceed with normal start. We're not going to do a motor start today. I don't need to. It's the first start of the day, so we're fine, but we will do an NTS. Moving on to number 11, as far as propellers go, they want you to double check and make sure they are clear and unfeathered. For the first flight of the day for us, they are unfeathered, so we don't have to worry, so we can proceed as normal. We're going to go ahead and do a left engine start today, and I just want to talk you through how to start the engine before we actually do it. So that way, once we do, it'll make a little bit more sense. So in order to do an NTS test, all we have to do is select NTS left. The left engine ignition switch will go to fuel pump on, then to air start, and then to ground. And all we're going to want to do is notice the rise in the inlet turbine temperature. They did note it as the EGT, so if I happen to say EGT, please forgive me, but it is for ITT only. We want to monitor the RPMs, and we also want to monitor the engine override light, or the NTS light that's going to pop on up here. So we want to make sure it comes on, and we also want to make sure it goes off as well. So looking at number 12, basically fuel pump goes on once we activate NTS, fuel pump to on, engine control switch to ground start run, and then we monitor engine gas temperature, we monitor RPM, and we also want to monitor and make sure that the NTS light does turn off. So let's go ahead and do the left engine, NTS left, fuel pump on, we notice a rise in the gauge, air start, ground start, and we can hear the engine turning over. We want to watch our ITT, watch our RPM, and watch our NTS light, which is also the ignition overhead light as well. Don't let that confuse you. Alright, ITT's coming down, light comes out, so the NTS comes off immediately after the light is extinguished. Watching our RPMs, watching our ITT go down. Oil pressure, we want to check our oil pressure on the left side, make sure it's doing good. Unfortunately for me, my gauges are pretty much stuck in the same position. It never gets up to 50. So my temperature gauges don't work, but oil pressure's looking good, fuel's looking good. So left generator's coming on, and we want to note that the left generator at NC light has extinguished.